Let's talk to Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt, who is former US Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs in the George W. Bush administration. Brigadier General, thank you very much for joining us. What do you make of what's happened today with the seizing of this ship in Icelandic waters? Why has America done this? And the fact that Britain has taken part in this, albeit in a relatively minor way, does that signal, in your view, that the special relationship is still alive and kicking?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to compliment you on that tie. That's quite a tie. Second, I would like to express the appreciation of the American people for the assistance shown by our friends in the United Kingdom, and it demonstrates that, yes, the special relationship still holds. Look, the fact remains is this was sanctioned oil, as you said, a ship that was up to no good. It is funding and support that it was keeping Maduro in power, and also supporting those who are sanctioned and those who are using that money to support the efforts in Ukraine.
There is a question mark over international law, though, on this, isn't there? Our Liberal Democrat political party, they're asking the government to provide evidence that this was legal and that Britain should have provided some support. Is that just political nitpicking, or do you think there are questions about international law to be answered here?
Well, whether it's nitpicking or questions, I think it's important to have that kind of transparency in front of our parliaments, in front of our Congress. I think if you don't do that strong questioning of the decisions of an administration, in many ways, the people lose faith in their government. There is a oversight responsibility that opposition parties do have.
And more generally at the moment, obviously there are strains between not just the UK, but other European governments and the US, particularly over the threats towards Greenland. Do you think that these concerns are even understood by President Trump?
I think they're understood by President Trump. I think if you read his book, The Art of the Deal, you will see what's going on here. I certainly don't believe that we want to make Greenland the 51st state. I think what's happening is a negotiating tactic. I think both the United Kingdom, NATO, and for that matter, the United States recognizes the national security implications of Greenland and how important it will be now. And as climate changes reduces, it warms a lot of the water in that area, which was previously impassable. That's the end. Now, the means to achieve that end, to use Greenland to the national security of the United States and our NATO allies, how we get there is a different story entirely. I do not believe that we are going to drop the 82nd Airborne. I don't believe we're going to send Delta Force in to snatch the polar bears. I think at this point, what we're trying to do is find a middle ground that all of us can agree upon to add to the military bases, the U.S. military bases that are already in Greenland.
When you were working for George W. Bush, was Greenland a subject that you even paid any attention to at that time?
Well, at that time, I think we were focused as a country, and me in particular, in the Middle East. And I'm not sure many of us were too focused. We were more focused about staying cool rather than staying warm.
Very good way of putting it. Thank you very much indeed. That's Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt. Now, Sir David Lidington is former chair of the Royal United Services Institute, former Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and de facto Deputy Prime Minister under Theresa May. David, very good evening to you. Let me ask you a similar question to that I put to General Kimmitt there. Do you think that the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom is under more strain than at any time in your adult life?
Yes, I do. And I think that it's not due to any one particular incident, but I think that if you look at the direction of US policy, I mean, even before President Trump, we had successive administrations expressing impatience with the failure of European countries to beef up their defense expenditure, take responsibility for a much greater share of NATO security and weaponry. And I think with President Trump, we've seen a very sort of vigorous and vivid assertion of a tradition of US nationalism that has been a bit underground in the United States for the last 80 years since Hitler declared war on the US in December 1941. But actually, if you look at the late 19th, first half of the 20th centuries, very much dominated American politics. You know, the assumption that the US sees European security as crucial to its own interests is something that started in the Second World War when the US came in and has continued since. And I'm afraid we've all got a bit complacent in Europe and taken it for granted. So in that respect, I think things have changed. And I think Trump is much more transactional, very genuine about putting America first and being pretty brutal as far as others' interests are concerned, except when they coincide with those of the US.
Let's look at the events of today with the seizing of this ship in Icelandic waters. Britain provided support to the Americans for doing that. Would that have happened under a Conservative government, do you think?
Oh, I think that a Conservative government would have given support to the United States in the way the Labour government has today. I mean, I think, as I understand it, we're waiting any moment for John Healey, the Defence Secretary, to make a statement to the House of Commons, which I hope will make the British government's legal arguments and the detail of the operation itself much more clear than is the case at the moment when we're still awaiting that statement. But it seems to be that there are good reasons to have intercepted this. The Russians have been operating along with the Iranians, sort of sanctions busting, so-called shadow fleets for many years now.
David, what did you make of what John Healey had to say, particularly about the seizing of this oil tanker?
I thought it was a persuasive explanation. I suspect that in the following questions from MPs, there's going to be more probing on the legal dimension. But I think the Defence Secretary set out very clearly that the vessel that was seized in apparently Icelandic waters today was part of a so-called shadow fleet of tankers that often fly under various flags of convenience, that are breaking sanctions, that are stopping the export of Russian oil as a result of following their invasion of Ukraine, that are trying to dodge sanctions against the export of Iranian oil too. And I understand with this particular vessel that was taken today, there's a history of it being involved in carrying cargoes for a company that's known to be linked to Hezbollah as well, so actively fomenting terrorism around the world. So I think that it seems to me that there are good grounds for seizing this tanker. And I think that, if you have a look at the UN law of the sea that's supposed to govern the position of ships while they're on a voyage, there are a number of things that I think are relevant to this. I mean, the first thing is that the ownership of a vessel is supposed to be reflected in the flag that they carry. If a ship switches flags, then it's supposed, under the UN law of the sea, to have involved a genuine transfer of ownership and control. Whereas what's happened in this case appears to be that the ship started off flying a Guyanese flag, then somewhere in the Atlantic, it suddenly decided they were going to paint a Russian flag on the side of the ship. They didn't even have a flag on board. And it looks to me, on the face of it, very clearly an attempt to switch flags, to try to use a flag of convenience to claim that they're Russian all of a sudden. And if a ship tries to switch flags for convenience and not for an actual change of ownership and control, then under the UN law of the sea, that ship loses most of the protections that it gets under normal international law. So I think there's good grounds looking at the UNCLOS, the UN law of the sea, there for intervention. I also, because this is in Icelandic waters, the Icelanders, assuming that they were party to this and approved a seizure within their waters, are entitled to have a vessel checked to see whether it's complying with all the rules on safety and on pollution control, because what we know about a lot of these shadow vessels is that they are very old, dilapidated tankers that we think are responsible for illegal oil spills and other forms of pollution in both national and international waters, and any state is perfectly entitled to stop a ship within its own waters to check whether it is compliant with global rules on safety and on anti-pollution. And personally, I think that European coastal nations, including us, ought to be rather more forward-leaning in being prepared to intercept and check ships that are within our territorial waters. And some of these shadow fleet tankers do come through UK territorial waters. We should be willing to stop them and check them out, whoever's flag they're flying, because there are legal grounds on which to do that. And I think that the more we can put these shadow fleets out of business, the safer the world will be, and the better our interests and those of our allies will be protected.